What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Dreamers Cypher, April 28th, 2021. Um, Today we got Andrew, is it Perkett?
Perkett, that's right. Good
Okay.
job.
Yeah, thank you. And super glad to have you here. As always, I really don't know anything about my guests. Scott usually oftentimes has a better interaction with a lot of these people coming on before I do. So with that being said, man, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here, and tell us a little bit about who you are, Andrew.
Yeah, of course, man. And I'll give you props again for the last name. Most people say Perkett,
Oh,
but it is Perkett. So I'm impressed to
thank
say
you.
the least. So yeah, man. So my name is Andrew Perkett. I am actually a local here in the Springs. I can't say native because I moved here when I was 2.
Oh,
So my wife won't let me have that title because she's a true native.
oh, okay,
Um, so even though it's all I remember, been here, was born in England actually. My dad was Air Force, so all I remember. But my wife won't let me have the title native, so about as close as it gets though. But yeah, man. So grew up in this city and couldn't wait to get out. And finally did, and for some reason ended up actually going to college in Illinois. Um, why you go there, I don't know, but did college there, ended up coming back, man, and it was pretty cool. Fell in love with this city, and really just wanted to see this city thrive, man.
mm,
And it was, looking back, it was a lot of more negative memories for me in high school years, and who has a lot of positive memories in high school, right?
right.
But looking back on that, and but really this was the place that formed me, man, and so came back to this place and just fell in love with it because of that, and wanted to make impact, man. And so I'm getting to do that now. I've my whole career here has been helping people. I worked with high schoolers for 5 years, in kind of a church sphere, church world type stuff, youth pastor role, which was great. But then, I started encountering my own struggles with my own mental health,
Mm,
primarily anxiety. And man, I just couldn't, I was cracking under this pressure that I was putting on myself. Um, and ended up just telling myself like I can't do this anymore. Hit an all time low. I had experiences with anxiety and depression before, but I just hit an all time low, man. And then had the opportunity to start the nonprofit that I'm running now alongside a good buddy of mine, and that just helps guys in mental health world. So that's a quick kind of overview of me and who I am, and obviously a brief. I'm sure we'll dive in more and talk more, but that's just a really quick background.
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. There's so many different things that I resonate with in there. So one, it's cool to know that your wife is a native. And I mean, you're, I guess, as close as you get, right? And we'll give you a
Yeah.
pass because of the military background. So tell your father, thank you so much for the service. Super important, near and dear to me personally as well. Um, and I don't know if Scott has shared anything about my personal story, but I actually kind of same thing. I actually dabbled for a period of time as a youth pastor. Was actually going to school for family and youth ministry,
Cool.
and shortly after that, basically, within the span of 5 years, my whole world started crumbling. Right.
Mm.
And so I went through depression, actually suicide, and to be able to kind of go from that and feeling unpurposed to turning around and being basically a business owner,
Mm.
building a business strictly off Facebook, turn around creating another entity here with Scott, called Two Native Sons, right? Basically two natives to Colorado. So I resonate so much with a lot of things that you said, man. So that's, I used to say misery loves company, but, flipping the script, now it's kind of like good people find each other, right? And good
Yeah.
people stick
Yeah.
together is kind of like the new mantra, the new twist on that. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much, man. That's really incredible to hear just that small portion of your journey.
Yeah, of course, and that's remarkable too, man. I actually really look forward to getting to know you more personally too. especially after that. That's great.
Yeah. So, this live podcast that we do is called the Dreamers Cypher, and you know, most of the time people use kind of the cipher and kind of like that hip hop element where they're kind of bouncing, and flowing. It's not kind of like it used to be, where it used to be more freestyle. Like now, a lot of these things are pre-written, but the concept is pretty much like bouncing ideas, letting the conversation kind of flow naturally wherever that leads to. Uh, Big shout out right here to Hype Designs, Patrick Massey, two native sons all day, every day. Let's go. Hey, Patrick, it's good to see you, my man. Actually, I'm super excited. Patrick and I are going to be looking to maybe do some collaboration, potentially, maybe creating a business. Basically, it's really me taking advantage of his artistic skills and seeing if I can pimp him out to be able to make some money and leverage that. So super excited though. I mean, he's a super talented guy, really hype guy, and recent father, and just, man, like, we surround ourselves, right? And we're always kind of the average sum of the people that we hang around. And so he's definitely one of those people that I look forward to hanging around and hopefully being able to enrich his circle as much as he enriches us. So
it's awesome.
So real quickly here, kind of had an interesting day today. I was supposed to have a meeting up in Denver, had a kind of a long drive, and, being kind of living here my whole entire life, right? Like I live like 3 miles away from where I grew up. And it's funny because, Colorado is not really small town, but yet at the same time, it's still a very small circle. And so, like, for me, I grew up right behind Doherty High School, right? And so I used to hop the fence and run over to the Blockbuster. I used to work at the Cub Foods that used to be there. I remember I used to ride my bike everywhere, and Barnes and Powers was considered expansion. They had that closed off dirt road that you couldn't get to. So I'd go and ride those hills behind Rudy Elementary School and those half pipes, things like that. But as I was driving, I'm kind of sitting there looking around and realizing, like, holy cow, when did we explode so much? So, both of you guys, and again, Andrew, for purposes of tonight, you can tell your wife we've given you honorary native status today, okay? I mean, because you're pretty. What are some of those things that you guys kind of maybe notice that, like, at what point did you realize, like, holy cow, we blew up so much? What are maybe some of the things that you used to go to, or places that maybe you remember that are no longer around? Kind of some of that nostalgia factor.
Well, of course, you have Blockbuster and Hollywood Video that is non-existent, which got destroyed by Netflix. And I think that's huge too, because when you hear the story of Blockbuster and kind of how they scoffed at Netflix and was like, oh, this is never going to happen. And then they came in, took over, and now you see where Netflix is with what they're doing. And I think we look at the city of Colorado Springs, and 85% of it's small businesses. And you have a lot of people that do look outside the box. And I think that's where you're seeing that explosion really is with individuals looking outside the box and saying, what can I do different? What can I do differently that will bring about change that we want to bring in the city? And I know with Andrew and his foundation, with what he has going in there, I think it's huge, because when we think about mental health for men, it's one of those things that it's hard for guys to ask for help. It's hard for guys to reach out and say, hey, I need help. And it's the piece of really, let's create a tribe, let's create an atmosphere where we can come in and be there for each other. And it's also one thing that we have to be mindful too, is creating that space of non-judgment. And I think that's sometimes where men will get stuck because they've asked for help, but then they have the judgment piece. And then because of the judgment piece, they're like, I don't want to help anymore. And so I think that's kind of the explosion that you're seeing in regards to things that are taking place. Men, I think we're more open really to say, hey, this is what's going on. And I know, Andrew, you talk about with your huddles that you have with your foundation, talking about if you're asked, hey, how was your day? Oh, it was good. Well, what made it good? Or it sucks. Well, what made it suck? What was out there to help you out and whatnot? So I think that's one of those things in regards for the growth of the city and what's taking place. So it's a little bit outside the box, but that's normally how we work anyways.
What's up, Joe? Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, that's it's like hard. All my stuff was kind of silly when I was thinking back for nostalgia, and then you went all deep on it, man. So I'll do a little bit of both. But I was actually telling somebody earlier this week. I remember actually off of Barnes and Powers, where there's now like Rhinos and that car wash on that corner right there. That used to be just all of that used to be field, right? Like I remember when all of that was just field, nothing was over there. But that was a sunflower field that when I was like 12, we went and did family pictures in that field, and it felt like we were going out to Kansas. Like it felt like we were out in the middle of nowhere, man.
Yeah.
And now like I live Stetson Hills and Powers, so I'm like a couple blocks from there. But I'm just like, man, like that felt like it was like we were in this open field. It was just sunflowers, so it's just crazy to me to think of that. I think of Palmer Park, like loved Palmer Park, but that huge metal slide, like that was the bane of my existence when I was a kid, man. Like it was huge. It was like the biggest slide in the city. It burnt the crap out of you going down. Like, I just think of that. I just think of that kind of stuff. My parents played softball at Goose Gossage and El Pomar. So it's just kind of crazy, man, to see some of those things and just, see the growth and development, especially out Powers and like the Northeast side is just insane, and Northgate and Interquest, and it's nuts, man. But similar to what you said too, Scott, seeing our city become, for the lack of a better term, almost like relevant, like I think we've all who have grown up here have seen the potential and know the potential of this city, but now it's happening, now we're getting really cool restaurants, we're getting really cool spots, we're getting all these cool things happening that are like super legit, and so there's like a sense of pride now. It's just like, oh man, I'm so proud. So proud of my city, we're like cool, but the coolest thing about it is like we are a big city, but I love how we've maintained like the small town vibe that we have. Like that is like my favorite thing about this place.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool that we have that small town feel still with a thriving, growing, you can even now say Olympic city, right? I think that's kind of the big push now, to kind of get some of that stuff going, a lot of revamps. Before I dive into kind of the next thing, I just want to throw out a couple of other business names, kind of like almost paying homage to that. Conway's Red Top.
Oh.
Right? As soon as you talk about that, everybody's like, oh, yeah.
Moment of silence, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember what was it, Hamburger Stand?
Yeah. Was that like the kind of drive-through hamburger spot?
Kind of, yeah. And I think it eventually turned into what's the one out there off of Powers in the old abandoned Kmart parking lot? But I think it eventually evolved to some of that, and so it's really crazy, because I think back on some of these things. I remember, Scott talks about Netflix. I remember having that big old red ticket when they first came out working at Best Buy, and I could not pay people to take advantage of renting DVDs, right? And it was like 99 cents for 10 DVDs that you could rent out, and people were like, no, that's never going to work, right? And then even to think that, like, man, did we really used to rent out DVDs like online? Like, and it's so crazy because I look at like Redbox, and for a while you're like, oh yeah, that's the wave right there. And then you're like, what happened to Redbox? Right? Yeah. So it's so crazy how quickly, how fast, we evolve and technology evolves. And I guess that kind of leads into, I've heard about kind of what you're doing, right, with these huddles, man. And so tell us a little bit more about kind of in depth, what is the huddle? Who's that for? I love the name, obviously coming from a sports background, kind of that camaraderie, right? Because when you are, especially from a football, you come together, you're sitting there, you're listening, you're all tired, but you guys know that you're pushing for and striving for that one big goal together. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That was really the heart behind the name too. Is it's a small, intimate place for people to just be on the same team. And so, yeah, man. So really, as a whole, kind of a 30,000-foot view of our organization is we actually I'll just give you a couple stats. This helps kind of show why we exist in the first place. And throughout his life, a man is 4 times more likely to die by suicide than a female. Globally, on average, a man dies by suicide every minute of every day. Here in El Paso County in 2019, we had 180 deaths by suicide. 79% of those were men. So that's just over 140 of 180 deaths by suicide. And then of men who experience depression, only 5% seek any outpatient resources. So we were just asked why. Like, why is that the case? So we actually started by one of my good friends started Inherent Clothier. And he went through some severe depression, and it was putting on a suit every day that got him through every single day. So he started a clothier to use menswear in order to inspire strength and confidence in men, which was awesome. But people took on the message so quickly and so well that he approached me. Was like, dude, I want to start a nonprofit. Let's do it. So I came along. We looked at these stats, and that 5%, man, we were like, why are these resources so unapproachable for men? Like, why is it only 5% actually seek them out? And we attributed it, this is not stats, this is opinion, but we attributed it to 2 things, aesthetic and cost. One, they're not super appealing, especially for men. It tends to feel, although they're effective, tend to feel pharmaceutical and clinical, and they're expensive. So we were like, how can we develop something that men want to be a part of, that men can just have that desire to be there? It's appealing, and it doesn't cost money, right? So how can we knock out 2 birds with 1 stone? And the first and initial thing was like, guys love dudes night, right? They love guys night, like a night with the guys, night with the dudes. But a lot of guys aren't very intentional to put it on the calendar, right? So we were like, we want to very intentionally create a space where men want to be, and men have the freedom and, Scott, like you said earlier, no judgment, to be able to open up and talk about what's really going on in their life. So we put out the one guideline at the beginning of the night. We say, when someone comes up to you and says, how's it going? How you doing? Good and I'm fine are not going to cut it. Either if you're good, you share why you're good. And if you're not doing well, just be real about it, man. Like, just be real. And when you challenge guys in that way and you say, just be real, you don't say, guys, talk about your feelings. You say, be real. Dudes have just responded so well to that. And as far as the appealing piece goes, man, we set up a poker table. I'm a huge poker fan. I love playing poker. I was about to say I'm a huge poker player, but I feel like that would imply that I'm actually good at poker. I usually just donate to the pot for everybody else that's playing, but I enjoy it. So we have poker. We've got refreshments. We're actually partnering with a non-alcoholic beer company from Denver called Groovy, who's providing all of our beverages, because we think when you got a drink in your hand, it's easier to have a conversation. Now, we would like to do real beer, but we know that can be a vice for a lot of men as well, So we have a non-alcoholic beer through these partners. And then we invite guys, bring your own cigar. So you can stand outside the shop and smoke cigars for a little bit, because some of the best conversation I've ever had has been around cigars, So that's kind of a quick premise of what it's for. It's just an organic, low-pressure environment for men to be real with other men. And so after our last one, actually, we had a guy who, he said that he brought his 2 coworkers. He's been working with them for 3+ years. I mean, been working with these guys for a significant amount of time. And he said at the huddle, they opened up and were vulnerable more than they ever have been in their entire, like he found out things he never knew before just about who they are as a person, because it was a safe place for them to open up, you know? So that's what, that's in a nutshell what the huddles are. And they happen once a month.
Dude, that's awesome. I honestly can't wait for the next one because I would love to be able to attend. But now I see why you and Scott were well connected, right? Because Scott's also being a resource with his divorce podcast because he's really targeting for men, right? And so, you know, I mean, when he started that, he kind of asked the same question. He's like, why are there no advocates for men? Why are there no avenues for men to be able to release and talk, right? You see women kind of having like these divorce celebration parties, right? But I can't recall necessarily seeing a guy ever have one or host one or inviting people to come out for one, right? And so again, those statistics are definitely aligned with all those things. So thank you so much for what you guys are doing. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and again, you know, if you guys are watching this live and things like that, you know, let's not take away from the great things that a lot of women entrepreneurs and nonprofits and all of those things are doing. It's really awesome, right? And we love leading the charge to be able to be advocates and empower that. But understanding in this sector, especially coming from myself, there are very little resources for men to be able to go and reach out to. There's very little. And again, I say that, and it's probably a little bit more prevalent now with military PTSD and all of those things. But even still, I mean, even if you look at the statistics and the help that they're actually getting on some of those things, it's probably low. Right. So I love the fact that that's where your focus is. I love that the idea of kind of that how it started, right? Kind of there's that saying that you look as good as you feel, you know, so being able to with the kind of the clothing things and things like that. So what are, I guess, like what are the, how do you guys get a lot of your resources, right? And then where are some areas that maybe collaboratively, whether it's us or through our networks and through our tribes, that we can go ahead and also help out with that. Soul Martin, thank you so much for being here. Good to see you. And Dr. G, I want to go back to your comment here in just a minute as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're fortunate to have the partnership with our clothier. And so we do have our clothier and then we have our foundation, all a part of the Inherent Body. Now, our foundation is a 501c3, so we rely heavily on donations and gifts and volunteers. And so part of our funding does come from our clothier. So anything that someone buys from our clothier, a portion, a percentage does go directly to our foundation, which is awesome. Excuse me. And besides that, it is relying on donations. It's relying on, fortunately, we have the space as well. Inherent Clothier has a shop, brick and mortar shop downtown. That's where we host our huddles. And man, again, with this city, people are so kind to donate space and to just be kind with donating resources right now because we are young. So we officially launched in November, but then we kind of rebranded, changed our mission, and relaunched in February.
Wow.
And so we're pretty young. We're still figuring it out, and we keep saying, man, like we're actually growing faster than Grant's move. So we're like, okay, I guess we'll find a way to make one right now. But it's been cool to see people hop on board, man. I mean, we actually have a presence now in the IndyCar community, so we're going to be traveling to some Indy races this year and putting our huddles on at those events, which is pretty remarkable. Yeah, we've just been fortunate to have enough people believe in this mission to really just donating. I mean, even Groovy, this company, donating beverages for every event because they're like, yes, we want to help people be able to have a good time without having to have alcohol, you know, because there's a balance there for sure. I'm a beer fan, right? But it's understanding the limits and the vice that it can be for a lot of men. So, but yeah, I mean, so that's where a lot of our resources are right now. That's where they're coming from right now. And really, because this is my home, like my whole kind of push has been, I want this city this will always be HQ for us. And to have this city kind of getting behind us and being a part of this, guys come into these huddles and just seeing change happen. Excuse me, that's the dream for me. Is to just see this community come behind us and just have that support, and not just financially. Like, clearly we need the financial support,
Sure.
but to be advocates for not just us, but for men in general. And so we're actually developing a training right now, a mental wellness advocate program. To we like to be pretty clear, like we're not doctors, and so we partner with various professionals to make sure we're not acting in ignorance, but to also develop a program to help people be able to talk about or facilitate conversation with someone who is going through anxiety or depression, and being able to do that. And we've been fortunate to have some private funders pay for some extra training for us to be able to implement into this program that we're building to empower other people to be able to talk to men who are going through this. So I might have strayed a little bit there, but that's the gist of it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. I love to kind of hear about that. I immediately kind of think of like, who do I know that's a go-to, right? Right up that alley. And again, you may already be connected with them, but if not, I'll definitely going to connect you with some people that I think would be up there. The other cool part too is that, through my business, which is kind of an insurance agency, I had a client who recently kind of donated some funds in regards to being able to help out. And, for him, he prefers veterans, but we basically kind of created what we call the Coleman Fund in honor of him, but through that process, what Scott and I have talked about through our business as Two Native Sons is that 25% of our proceeds goes directly back into that fund to be able to do that. And ultimately, we don't have really the time at this point to be able to kind of start our own nonprofit, but we have talked about umbrellaing under other ones, and then maybe having a committee to help disperse some of those funds and some of that help, and also maybe bringing on other companies who are willing to kind of help and donate to that cause as well. So that's something that I would definitely love to kind of maybe have another conversation with you about in regards to doing some of that stuff, so that way we can maybe partner up on making some of those impacts. Obviously, this is kind of near and dear to me, and I know Scott shares a lot of times his story, and I'm learning more about it every time he tells it, right? But he talks about how he easily could have been one of those victims, right? I mean, I tried and kind of failed at that even, and so when you look at some of those things and you look at the impact that you guys are having, especially, most people will kind of look at you and be like, man, you started a nonprofit in the middle of a pandemic where nonprofits are struggling, right? But to me, I'm like, man, props to you guys for doing that, because that's insane on so many levels. But that's exactly, that shows you that you guys are going in the right direction. This is much needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I want to go back to a comment that Dr. G had put out here. And again, shout out to Dr. G, Garrett Goggins. If you guys are not involved or checking out his podcast, Upstream Without a Paddle, you definitely need to do that. He's also got a book, bringing on some heavy hitters on his podcast. I've really been enjoying those. And, the guests are not going to stop. So you definitely want to get on now. It's insane. So, but he says, I remember watching the drive-in movies from my bedroom window. And what's really crazy? I've never been to a drive-in.
Really?
Yeah, and I know that they had them like up in Denver still, and I think the one down in Pueblo kind of closed down, but I know that they got them up in Denver. So, we were supposed to go, I think, when the pandemic first started, and we just we couldn't make it up. So yeah, it's still one of those things on the to-do list. But have you guys experienced going to the drive-in? Is it live to the hype? Do you miss it? Kind of maybe some of your takes on that.
I went with my family, and so it was one of those things. It's a bonding experience. It's a way to create memories and whatnot. You're watching movie from your car. So hopefully your car is comfortable. But the way cars are now, it is to the level where you should be pretty comfortable watching a movie from the vehicles that we have now. So, but it's one of those experiences. Really, it's just another way to experience a movie, just from a different vantage point, I guess.
Yeah, man. We actually went quite a bit when I was growing up. My dad's really into like state fairs and drive-ins, like all that kind of stuff. So we went quite a bit, and I love him, man, but I don't, because they do 2 movies at once most of the time. So usually it's a back-to-back showing, and I don't know if I've ever made it all the way through without falling asleep. So it's, which is, I guess, not a bad thing because it's relaxing and it's fun. And we've got kind of an old '96 GMC truck. So, you know, if we went now, we'd definitely try and throw a mattress in the back of that thing and make it worth it. So
nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Scott, I want to oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I did tag the link on Facebook for the foundation. So if anybody wants to go check it out, it's there. But I find it interesting too, because when you look, let me see if this shows up here, but you look at that logo and it spells if. And so, and then there's a dot. So the eclipse or the ellipses, whatever it's called. And Andrew, I don't know if you've ever looked at that, but when I see that, it says if. And what does that pertain to, or if whatever? Was there an intentionality with that logo design to have the word if show up in there?
Yeah, man, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because there was a lot of intentionality behind that. And once we had Inherent Foundation, we were like, if. Oh, that's so cool. But it was a part of my journey into starting this thing because, you know, I was leaving a career that I knew, I was well networked in. You know, I was experienced. I felt like I was pretty good at it, you know. And so there's a lot of anxiety that I felt leaving that career to do something new. And I remember having a conversation with one of my buddies, and I specifically was sharing my anxiety, sharing my fear. And I was just like, dude, what if it doesn't work? And his response was yeah, but what if it does? Right. And so I was like, so one of our big things is we actually don't want men at the end of their life looking back and saying, what if I would have gotten help, man? Like, what if I would have made a change? Because then not only does he become better when he does, but he's a better husband, he's a better father, he's a better friend. And to kind of even circle back to earlier when we were talking about there isn't a lot of things for men, you know, I just wanted to echo what you said of like, yes, but we don't want to take away from the incredible empowerment of women. And because I believe a healthy man empowers everybody around him, but he empowers the women in his life. He empowers the people around him. He's not trying to control and put people down. You know, and my wife was the biggest support through all of my anxiety stuff. And so my goal is to be the best husband for her. And that doesn't mean to just be like, oh, I love you. It means to actually like not drag my wife along, but push her ahead of me, man, to like walk alongside her and empower my wife, empower the people around me, because that's what being a good leader is. So anyway, it's a little side note, but yeah, so it was really geared towards early on in our social media. You can scroll all the way back on our Instagram, and we do have a series of questions that was, what if I was blank? So strong. What if I was confident? What if I was, and then our following question was, what if it's inherent in you? And that's where the name comes from too, is we believe that confidence, that strength, that a healthy life are all inherent inside every person. And so, yeah, so it's that what if thing is why we went with that logo. And then even the if only, man, I mean, I'll never forget actually one of my kind of triggers for me that I went through was when I was a junior in high school. I was playing basketball. I'm 5'8", 5'9" on a warm day, and so I said, I was playing basketball, and I worked hard, man. I was a hard worker because I was always the smallest guy. And I remember one day my coach was just like, Perkett, great job. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, if only you were 6 inches taller, right? It's that if only. And then, you know, with that, I had a lot of insecurity about my height, said I'd never date a girl taller than me. And my wife is 6 foot. So that worked out great. But that was a lot of anxiety that I went through as well. This voice was playing inside even when we were dating, when we were engaged, of if only you were 6 inches taller. Right. And so it is playing off a lot of that. A lot from my personal story is the what if this doesn't work? Yeah, but what if it does? And showing that to men. And then taking that if only and saying, like, if only it's actually inherent inside of you. Like it doesn't matter what you're lacking because you have so much good inside of you. So I'm gonna get a little too passionate and keep going here, but there is a lot of intentionality behind the IF.
That's awesome. No, I think the getting into the passion, honestly, because we had originally met at 1 million cups. So I heard the 6-minute kind of elevator presentation that we all give when you go through that. And then you had the 20 minutes of Q&A. But I think it's still one of those difficult things that it's hard to really showcase really what it's all about when you're limited to 6 minutes and then 20 minutes of Q&A, because there's a chance that you might shortcut yourself on some very vital information because you're trying to get so much in there, and it potentially hurts how people receive it, how people look at it. And so, yeah, if you keep going, that more power to you. And so that's just this avenue really to get it out there and share it. And I know Dr. G, I think that would be another one. Get you in contact with him, with his podcast, and just another stage to share the message, because the more that this can get out, because you had talked about Colorado Springs being headquarters for the foundation, but you have a vision of a very wide swath of, I'm guessing globally, having this globally to really impact men around the world, because it is one of those things that just creating that space for all of us. And you have some cultures that are very much more close knit than what you see in America. But still, though, as men, we're all going through some sort of garbage that it's tough that we have to get out of our own way and just say, yep, if I need help, I need help. But also build your community, build your tribe.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have children?
I do not. I've got a little fur baby around here somewhere.
Okay.
We got a little pup, but that's all for us right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, as I'm hearing the things that you're doing, right? Oftentimes, especially I think for men, we start thinking about maybe our legacy a little bit too late, right? And so as we're having this conversation, you know, as a father, I kind of think of like, man, where are some of those things, some of those breaks, some of those places that I can look at for my own children, right? Because I know that it's, you know, it's not so much that my father was kind of like this dominant alpha male figure, but there was like the little things, right, that we grew up for our generation, right? Scott talks about this all the time, that as men we're told, don't cry. Men don't cry. Right? Women are told, don't show anger because you're a lady, right? And so we all kind of have some of these things, you know. And for me, I mean, I had kind of a rough childhood a little bit early on. My mom left when I was 9. My dad raised 3 of us by himself. And so, you know, a father's touch is definitely not the same as a mother's touch. And so for him, it was, his escape was work, right? There wasn't those hugs, you know, that that little kids need and all that stuff, you know, and it was kind of like, hey, throw some dirt on it, right? But so I had kind of a unbalance, at least what I thought was an unbalance, because my coping, like when I would get upset, it was just letting out all the things, right? And so now we coach to about all the different things about how if you want to experience balance, you have to allow yourself to experience all of the emotions. Because if you're not, it's going to be really hard to be balanced when you're already leaning one way or the other. So when you come and show up, when you have that conversation, you telling people, hey, be real, right? I love the kind of the mentality, the mindset that, and the culture that you're shaping for men, right? And then it's kind of like, well, we need to start maybe going one step further, right? Because it's one thing to be vulnerable as a male, but then how do we also showcase that to our children, because we weren't taught those things, right?
Yeah.
So as we're kind of going through some of this stuff, before we end this stream tonight, maybe for some of the guys that are watching this, I kind of wrote a poem for my song not too long ago, and I actually filmed his reaction, and it really kind of like was crazy because I didn't expect it. He ended up actually breaking down in tears himself.
Wow.
And when I asked him, I said, why, what happened, right? And it kind of like, it broke my heart in a great way because my son said, Dad, the words were too beautiful. And at 5 years old, to understand that he's an empath and that he understands kind of, and he takes those things and understands them. And so for me, what was always kind of considered, I thought, my greatest weakness and the things that were held against me are now my greatest strength. And so now it's my responsibility to teach him, like, I know this hurts now or all these things and you feel weird, but it's okay, and so to be able to kind of do all that. So, this, what you guys are doing is so needed in today's world, man.
Thanks, man. And I love hearing that and love hearing your heart for your kid, man. And although we don't have kids yet, I'm very excited for that when that day happens, and I'm nervous and scared for what that's going to look like. And, but, I have obviously limited things that I can say because I'm not a parent, but from my own experience, I have a great dad, and he's not a handyman, didn't teach me how to fix cars. He's a computer guy. So, and I'm not a computer guy. So, I mean, there's that, but but my dad is just so wise. He would just give me incredible advice and still does. I mean, to this day, maybe my dog just knocked down a lamp. Sorry, that was distracting. Speaking of having kids, but yes, but he's always given me great advice. But the one thing, and I wouldn't go back and change this. I wouldn't. None of that. I don't want to give off of that because I agree with you. I think what we've been through equips us and makes us powerful for what we're doing now.
Yeah.
It's our story, and I value every part of my story. But I was reading just some text on developing and development differences between boys and girls, and girls when they're developing as babies and infants, they don't need that many social emotional cues. They're far more independent when it comes to socially and emotionally, whereas boys are the opposite. They feed off of the cues of their caregivers. And so I actually didn't have a dad who said, boys don't cry, suck it up, get over it, rub some dirt on it. No, my dad never told me those things, but I never saw my dad cry until I got older, and then I did. But as a kid, never really seeing my dad cry, I took those context clues. I took that guidance that I was observing and made my own assumption between that and what I experienced in culture, and was like, well, I guess boys don't cry. Right. And so I try and tell guys like, yeah, words are great, encourage, all that stuff. But, and this is where it gets, guys start to feel tension. It's like, let your son see you cry. Let him see you have emotion besides anger. And there's like, it's kind of scary because we're not used to that, man. But when you allow, and that's an intimate space. So when you allow the people you love into that intimate space of emotion, I mean, the impact is endless, right? And you're showing your son, like, this is actually okay. and I'm going to set the example for you, you know? So, so I applaud you, man, for doing that. And that's just kind of just from the research we've done and things we've read that we encourage guys to do with their kids. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I feel like that every mic drop starts with, "Hey, I was reading a book," right? Because you know, statistically, you look at people and we're not doing as much reading as we honestly should, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, statistically, you're looking at all the benefits and things like that. So, thank you so much for hammering 2 points really on that, because it's something that that you know we're kind of big on here. So. Um, we've got probably about 13 minutes. You know, a big segment of what we like to do is, you know, and I love the fact that you've acknowledged your father, but oftentimes we get busy, right? And that's just kind of, you know, we're trying to build, we're trying to grind, we're trying to get all those things. But, you know, one of the things that has always been big for me for really everything that I do is kind of being able to take that time to kind of acknowledge or give back, you know, in terms of just gratitude. And so, because, you know, maybe you've been going so busy, is there anybody at this point in time, again, maybe it's not, maybe they'll never see this, but really for you to acknowledge maybe somebody or some people, you know, things that maybe you haven't got a chance to do recently?
Yeah, man, I, you know, after what I went through kind of with this anxiety and what that anxiety caused me to do was really distance myself from people. And because subconsciously it was the way to protect them the best. Because I was like, I'm not good enough, so I'm going to distance myself from them. And so since I've gotten healing from that, I've really been able to live with more gratitude. So I love that you're doing this, more gratitude for primarily the people around me. And so these are the things that I get emotional about. So I might set the precedence here for some emotion, but dude, every time I talk about this, and I think I brought her up at 1 million cups too, Scott, but it's just my wife, man. I mean, I've never met a stronger human than my wife. And, you know, what she went through when I was going through severe anxiety and distancing myself from her and pushing back and being disconnected. And man, I mean, she was so diligent, so present, and not to give more advice, but people ask, how did I make it through that season? It's because I had her and I had other people close enough who knew me well enough to know I wasn't okay. And they simply asked me, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" Right? You didn't just let it slide and say, he'll get better. They intentionally were like, "Hey, something's not right. And we're not okay with that." So, but I mean, just my wife's been there through the whole healing journey. You know, healing is never ending. So we're still healing as a couple and individually. So yeah, man, just thinking her, and then just you know, I had people who took a chance on me took a risk for me to leave and go full time right away running this foundation. So my buddy Taylor, man, who runs the Clothier, who started that, who had the initial dream, dude, I, you know, super thankful for him and what he's doing for the Clothier that he started. So having people take a chance on you, man, is remarkable, you know, and that's what I think we should always risk it for people, man. Always risk it for people, because there's nothing more rewarding. You know, there's no greater return than valuing somebody, showing somebody that they're worth it, you know? So anyway, yeah, those are kind of, and my dad, dude, I'd go on for forever, man. My dad, when I made this shift, I was like, what if it doesn't work? He's like, well, if it doesn't work, we've got a basement and we got your back, you know? It's so just the support's just remarkable, man. So I'll stop with that. I guess I should throw my mom in there in case she sees it. Thanks for birthing me, Mom. I
Thanks,
love
Mom.
you. I'd be remiss if I didn't throw. I feel like it's understood, but you know, gotta throw it out there. But
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
man, I love that you guys do that, though. I appreciate you giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, no worries, man. I feel like that, it's one of those things that's kind of we often overlook. We can, every day above ground is a good day, right? And that means so much more to me than most, I think. But taking that time to really understand, like, there are so many moving parts, so many odds against you to be able to get to where you are. And so
Yeah.
to be able to kind of bask in that moment, to be like, dang, I really am doing this. And Scott, and I love this, right? Because Scott's like my life coach too. He says when you it's what is it, no longer when you have to, but you get to, right? And we take
Yeah,
that
you gotta flip
approach.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, man, I can't believe I really get to do this every single day. So
Yeah. It's remarkable.
yeah.
Love that.
So let me share this poem. It's not too long, but again, the context is that I wrote this for my son because I write a birthday poem for my sons every year. It's something that I've always done, and my my son Maddox didn't really remember, and he was like, "I don't remember you writing poems." So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna record it." And what came from that was like one of the most beautiful moments that I've ever had. So again, that's really the context behind it. But again, just so that way you guys can maybe understand, and really this is kind of for fathers. This is for maybe yourself kind of reliving those moments in your childhoods, but I'd love to kind of hear maybe some of your guys' thoughts afterward. Okay.
Yeah.
This one's titled The Madman. My son's name is Maddox, and we call him Madman. I pray, I hope, and I dream for you that my legacy will someday shine in you. Live this one life so that you may live yours to the best of your ability. Spare your one life because you're already the best of me. I love how your love invests in me. It grows daily. It's unfathomable, unimaginable that you're my mini me. I see your mom as I trace my hand across your cheek. 5 years old and you inspire me. You teach me on the daily. You got me ready to take on everything. You're my only weakness, and that's a very scary thing. So just sit back and observe, just be ready to learn, and I'll be ready when you need me, because someday I'll be the one in need. One day you'll have a kid of your own. You'll hold his or her hand, and they'll ensure that you're never alone. They'll be the kryptonite that you never knew you had. They'll give you the greatest gift ever, being a dad. My dad is great, and that's who I learned from. Your gramps, grandpa, and uncles will teach you too. You are the change, your heart pure and kind. I'll always ensure that you're ahead and never behind. Be a leader, not a follower. Be humble, be kind. Lead the way, be yourself, and help everyone. Your natural self is a wonder. God will keep you aligned. Your path is divine, and you are far from just being anyone. Don't succumb to pressure. You come from warrior ancestors. Me, your old man, will teach you many endeavors so you can do whatever, whenever, however. A few more things I wanted to mention. Life always gives you big lessons. Nobody is better than anyone, no exception. Make mistakes often, learn from them. There's a connection. And remember that no matter what happens, I'll always be proud of you. You're allowed to dream in the clouds. You're allowed to frown and pout, and I'm always going to love you without a doubt. Because you're my everything. You can do anything. My little madman, God has plans for you, and I can't wait to see the man that you become. I can't wait to see you march to the beat of your own drum because you'll be an enigma. A much needed change of pace that sets the stage, and even if you don't, just know that you already did. For me.
That's remarkable.
Love
man.
it, man.
Remarkable.
Writing has always kind of been therapy for me, and it's always kind of been, I mean, much like everything else, there's been an involvement and there's been a change. And, there was a point in time when it was like, oh God, he's a beatnik, right? But now, like, when you realize, and I had a poetry mentor once told me, he's like, words are powerful, right? if you're faith-based and you look in you know, through the Bible, there's many verses that talks about cursing and use your tongue as a weapon, and you know, but when you go back and you look at the intention behind the words, the intention of how you say something, right? Those things really do truly impact people. And so, you know, learning that this gives me a voice, this gives me some tangibility to my thoughts, to my expressions that maybe oftentimes we don't remember because we're just in the moment. So thank you guys for entertaining me with that.
Yeah. Loved it, man.
All the time.
And yeah, I would read anything you write, man. I'm in the same boat. My top like love language is words of affirmation, man, and I'm very much a words guy. So I can really appreciate that. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a few more moments here. And Scott or Andrew, either one of you guys, I mean, any closing thoughts? You know, I hope that this was a pleasurable experience for you. I'm super excited to be able to connect with you outside of this and learn more and be a supporter. But any closing thoughts for you guys this evening?
No,
All right. No, honestly, I want to thank you, Andrew, for jumping on here. I tell people sometimes I'll go and talk to them. Patrick will do the same thing, and we'll be like, "Hey, love what you're doing. Want to have you come on and share your story." And sometimes I think back in my mind, I'm like, "Man, if a couple of years ago, if somebody did that, I'd be like, nope, I'm good." But no, it's great because what you're doing, your story, and really the initiative that you have is huge. And it's one of those things that I tell people statistically when it comes to a divorce or an expired relationship, it's 39 men a day will kill themselves through that loss of that relationship. So I think with what you're doing with the foundation, it's given that tribe for men to reach out to build those relationships. And it's just something that's much needed in our society to have that, because we speak different languages when it comes to men and women. But it's also the fact that as a tribal society coming up and whatnot, we had many people to go to talk to, and we don't rely on just one person. And so I think the foundation that you've created and you're working to expand provides that tribal peace where men can come together and have somebody or multiple people that they can lean into and understand that they're not by themselves.
Yeah.
That's good, man. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, from my end, just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. Real easy to have a conversation with you guys. I can't believe it's already been an hour. I'm ready for the second hour, so you just let me know when. But yeah, man, I'm likewise. I'm really excited to connect after this, and man, you know, I encourage people like just take the first step, man. Just the first step, like, and that's really what huddles are. It's just taking a first little step, and I tell people, man, like even if it's a little step, it's still a step forward. You know, you're not expected to jump 2 miles in one day. You know, just take a small step, pick your head up, and just do that small thing that's needed. You know, and so yeah, that's just the kind of quick encouragement, and we want to be accessible, exactly like you said, Scott. It's just a community. It's a tribal thing. It's, you know, one of our sayings that we say all the time is we're all in this together, man. You know, depression, anxiety, it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how much money you have or don't have. It doesn't care how old or young you are, you know, what color skin you have, how you look. It wants to kill us all. And we're all in this together. So
Love that.
yeah, just to help each other take that first step. So
guys, if you're catching this either live or on the replay, do us a favor, go to facebook.com/inherent foundation, drop a like, follow them. I'm checking out some of their stuff here as we were going through, and the content is incredible. You understand the heart story now behind it as well, and this is
Mhm.
something that's much needed. So I highly encourage you to go ahead and do that. To go ahead and also type in #if. That's going to go ahead and allow Andrew to go ahead and just kind of give him the green light for him to go ahead and connect with you automatically, to kind of hear about it. And again, if maybe taking that first step is a little bit difficult in the process, feel free to DM us, right?
Mhm.
Reach out to us, and we'll get you connected. So that way, maybe it's hard to go ahead and put that out there publicly for whatever reason. That's okay, right? We always want to be an advocate and a resource for everybody to make this as easy as possible. But again, facebook.com/inherent foundation or #if. We want to thank Andrew for his time this evening. Thank you again, man. I'm super excited to just kind of see the growth of everything. And guys, we will catch you next time on the Dreamer Cypher. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.